Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians.
Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
Welcome, everybody, to NEUROPA. I am Andreas. Draft is down in the corner. How's it going? Ready to get into the fight when necessary. Martin's here. Good to see you, Martin.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
We have a very special guest tonight, Franz Hörmann. How are you doing?
Nice, very well.
I was hoping you might be able. Oh, sorry.
I'm very, very interested in the topics of our dialogue.
Well, absolutely. So today we've titled the episode "Fraudulent Accounting System," but maybe you'd like to give yourself an introduction, a bit about what your life is about, and what have you studied.
So I started studying as a student accounting information systems. In the German countries, we call it Wirtschaftsinformatik, and it is quite a different thing as in the United States. In the United States, you go really deeply into how databases work, how encryption works, what is a secure web server, and things like that. In the German-speaking countries, at my time, when I was a young student, I still had the opportunity to choose programming languages, which I could learn and practice. And in fact, I wrote a lot of programs as my scientific work. My dissertation was a program in C, in the good old programming language C, which was 33,000 lines of code. It was a new kind of database for the quite difficult tax system in Austria we had there. And I implemented even spreadsheet-like calculation rules, but then using a kind of integrity. You couldn't delete accounts that were still used in different formulas. This is something that even Microsoft Excel didn't have. You could, of course, delete cells in Microsoft that were used in formulas. So you call it referential integrity, and I implemented that, and I programmed a recursive descent parser for the four basic calculation rules, and with arbitrary parentheses, levels of parentheses to calculate that. It was really a work. I needed 1.5 years to program that, but it was a lot of fun, and I learned very important things about how bookkeeping software works, how it really works. And after that, I was a specialist for accounting systems, even at audits. When auditors made audits of listed companies, I supported them, but only up to a certain point in my career, when I realized that it wasn't even possible to support the auditor in the way it would be necessary, because there was a theoretical problem that was in practice nowhere solved. That is the software identity problem. That means if you test and certify a concrete software implementation, the auditor, the CPA, always checks the data on a paper-based printout. And no one can testify that this printout comes from that software system that you have certified. Okay. There are always different installations in accounting systems, one for operation, another one for testing purposes when a new software release is implemented, things like that. So it was really, it was a hard decision when I declared I don't do this anymore, because the security that would be necessary, I cannot guarantee personally. And therefore, I stopped doing that. Okay? And I don't produce the illusion of correct audit trails through the whole systems when it is not possible.
That's so interesting. So a couple of thoughts there.
Personal honesty forbid it.
Right.
To keep on going.
There's a couple of thoughts there. So one thing is, samizdat, like the Soviet Union had printers that were, or typewriters that were licensed. So when something printed, you could tell which typewriter the piece of paper had gone through. So you could make sure if someone had written the proper.
I
Now,
think,
of course,
I think in the Western business world, it would be a great problem if they had
Right.
to use that.
right. But there is a thing apparently. So HP, Oki Data, I don't think does this. Is one of the few, there's like one of the few companies that doesn't do this, but most of the Western printer companies do use now some yellow kind of ink to print a very fine message that tells you which printer or which IP address for safety reasons in case someone uses it for kidnapping or something like that. So there are
in the US ballot sheets for the election. It would have been popular to use it.
This is fair. But another question I had was, so this is really fascinating software that you designed that allowed you to have variables essentially of the formula. So can you give an example of where this might save a corporation some money?
You could automate your tax declaration, your yearly tax declaration for each different tax law. You had a new accounting cycle, and the accounting cycles were organized hierarchically. You implemented the formulas, and you said, I want the value-added tax, I want the income tax. What do I want to calculate? And the system calculates automatically up to this level and prints out the tax declaration.
Wow!
So it was really a very, very fine piece of software. It was already in the DOS-based world. We didn't have MS Windows. Okay,
no GUI.
So it was at the end of the 80s, 1987, and then the professor that was my doctor father, so to say, he advised me to look for a software company and make a business model out of that. And he even recommended one concrete firm in Austria, a software firm. And just at that time, when I tried to get into contact with them to speak about the possibility to implement my software idea for the market, their business model blew up because it was a spectacular fraud.
They didn't have the code that you had.
They defrauded the largest companies, sacked in millions of money for not only for a prototype that didn't really work, and they didn't finalize that.
Wow.
And this was the end of my business dream with this kind of software.
Because they screwed it up, even though you had a working software.
Exactly, and then I tried to get funds from the state, from Austria, that could support me in building a startup. And there I had to send my documentation to a scientific commission that would decide if I would get startup financing for that. And our contact man, a professor, called me into his secretary once in a while and told me it might be that this commission declares your idea is quite good, but they would like more concrete explanations how it works. And if this will be the case, it's your decision if you give them the information. But I have to tell you, all those professors in the commission have their own software firms. And there is a high possibility that they will implement it on their own and bring it to the market. Okay? And this was exactly what happened in the next step. So
wow.
I stepped from one fraud scheme into the next. Okay.
That's horrible. So somebody stole your idea.
It was a great lesson. I learned how our Western business system really works. And I'm not angry at all. It is all a fraud scheme. It starts really in the money system.
It's amazing how someone can...
It's fraudulent in itself. So there can never be an honest business model that is successful.
It's amazing how somebody could pour so much effort into somebody else's idea that they're not even passionate about. That's the thing that blows my mind. I don't know if that's like a post-war thing or what's going on over there. But like you fight for your own dream. It's the only thing that confuses me. But okay, in terms of fraud and in terms of the entire accounting system, you kind of just said, whatever. I mean, that's its nature. Yeah. Why is it its nature? What do you mean by that?
It is its nature because we are locked into a zero-sum game with our monetary system. So we are forced to play poker against each other, because at the end, the winner takes it all. As long as I pay $100 for something, a good or a service that is worth $100, I spend $100, I give it away, and I receive $100. So for each partner in this deal, it is a zero-sum game, because he gives the same amount as he gives it away, and he takes it back. And the most well-known zero-sum game is, in fact, the card game poker. And in poker, we know the winning strategies. There are only two. One is called the poker face, don't give away any information. And the second, even better one, is bluffing. So it is fraud by intent. Okay. So in a zero-sum game, we destroy the possibility to be honest in our informations. And it is a catastrophe. And I don't understand why in game theory, this is not the first headline everywhere, a warning from zero-sum games. There are many, many card games and board games that are plus-sum games, where all the players together can win or together can lose. It's quite simple. You just have to write down the winnings and the losses, and they never add up to zero per round. This is the characteristics of a plus-sum game. And playing a plus-sum game, we all can get wealthier together without that it's necessary that anyone loses. So this is really a very important point. And at that step, when I realized that the zero-sum character of our financial system is at the root of dishonesty in our business deals, there is no problem to be angry against fraudsters anymore, because they just choose the most efficient winning strategy in the zero-sum game. So if
why do we have
the rules of the game, everything will play out fine.
Why do we have a zero-sum game economy?
Because we oriented on this idea that there is a finite sum of gold coins, and we give it around in a circle in our tribe, our village. And this is never a really good idea, because then we try to defraud each other, and this comes from the rule of the game, and not because people are so bad, have a bad moral.
I want to say thanks to Vitska for the super chat, by the way. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Even in British economy, we don't know what it means with this accounting system. But so my further question then, so this idea that we could replace the zero-sum game, why haven't they? What was the value that they found in not replacing it? Who's winning by there being a zero-sum game?
I think it has such a long tradition and history, for hundreds and even thousands of years, that we use this kind of model, that everyone who thinks about economics in financial terms also thinks about zero-sum games. Just think the most powerful minister in each government is the Minister of Finance. Why? Because he has the hand on the very scarce resource of the public budget. And each time he wants to spend more for health, education, you name it, he has only two choices. either he levels up the taxes or he takes away the resources of some different department in the government. Okay, so once again, he plays the zero-sum game. In reality, now we know that the debt level of governments rise up and up and up and up, and we see nothing happens. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, everything's fine. Yeah. In fact, it is everything fine because we can bring money on and on and on, and it wouldn't even be a problem if not our banks, our private banks, would create the money every time, each time they are lending out a credit, a loan, you know. So if they lend out a loan, they are in reality, they are creating new money.
Right.
It is only an accounting unit in the accounting system. And this is not even cash on a balance sheet level. In fact, CPAs, certified public auditors, acclaimed in a public letter that they violate the international financial reporting standards globally. All banks that give out loans in this way, just incrementing the balance sheet. Yeah. Because this is it is just a computer game of the bank and nothing of value.
So, but that's interesting because then the banks are imagining that they're creating wealth. They're imagining they're creating value. There's an increase of number, but the amount of resources aren't shifting because of that.
Exactly. This is the first problem. But even the worst problem is we have twice a debt that is created. So the bank customer, the creditor, he is indebted because he believes he lent out the money from the bank. But on the second side, the bank also creates a debt in its own balance sheet. So in the long term, it is impossible that banks that give out loans can survive. They must implode sooner or later. And each banker, each CEO, each bank owner who knows that can abuse it. And therefore, William K. Black, a former banking auditor at the end of the 80s in the saving and loan crisis, he later on wrote a book about that, what happened 1987 and the years after. And the title of the book is The Best Way to Rob a Bank is to Own One. You can buy this book at Amazon. Yeah, exactly. Very nice. Thank you very much. The best way to rob a bank is to own one. Here is Mr. Black. Exactly. So what really happened, in those days, nearly 3,000 small saving and loan institutions, banks, were insolvent and were caught up using taxpayers' money. And then the political ideology dictated that we needed very courageous investors that bought those insolvent banks, and then they wouldn't be regulated at all anymore because the free competition makes them healthy again. This was the capitalist dogma in those days. This was under Ronald Reagan. Okay. But what really happened was that all those buyers of those insolvent banks were strawmans of mafia bosses. And they bought the banks at a very low price. And after they owned the bank, they lent out a loan to the boss of the mafia. William K. Black called them banksters. He never paid back the loan at all. And once again, this bank went insolvent and had to be rescued again with taxpayers' money. So if you know how the bank works, and if the loan must kill the bank in the long run, you can abuse it because you take out some loans for you, your family, your friends, because you say, it is deemed to implode the bank.
Franz, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
You mentioned that we have this zero-sum game for hundreds or maybe thousands of years.
Yeah.
Would you say that the foundation of the Federal Reserve Bank in the US made this problem even worse, or was it there before that already?
No, I think it didn't make this specific problem worse, but it made the possibility to abuse it worse, because it is always a question of the dimension of the fraud. If it is a small saving and loan institution, or if it is a central bank or a national bank that supplies a whole national economy with money. So Federal Reserve always has been a private bank with private owners, as we now know, and even can publicly speak out without being accused of being conspiracy theorists. It is only, I would say, some years, so about 10 years ago.
But there's been a so here's the thing. You're a conspiracy theorist if you say it in a bad way.
Yeah.
If you wanted to be a Wall Street guy and you were talking about the beautiful brilliance of the banking system, this was the kind of thing that they sang songs about 100 years ago. I mean, it's amazing what you can do. You can put all this money in the bank. The bank gives it to somebody else. They put it in the same bank. The bank just invents fake money. I mean, that's impressive. But what you said is interesting is that there's no actual increase in value, because you think about the Soviet Union when it collapsed. All these guys who were trading Walkmans for socks in the street, and eventually at the end of the day, they got back 2 pairs of socks for the same. They would increase the value. The only way they're really increasing the value is through actually trading, doing labor, getting several options together. It's not through the actual number system. And that number system is actually every single time you have a major collapse, like 2008, we have this economic collapse,
the prime crisis. Yeah,
it's because of the resource scarcity that's associated with this speculation of value. It's runaway speculation.
I must say that the resource scarcity is an artifact.
Okay.
Because each and every substance that may be scarce can be substituted by a different substance that is quite similar in use,
Right.
Yeah. And this is something that must not happen in our current business world, because whole industry branches would break down. I will give you a small example. As we all know, at the starting of the 70s, Richard Nixon's decoupled the dollar from the gold price. So he stopped the gold standard. So now they needed a new stable value to anchor the value of the dollar. And so the petrodollar was invented. So each country that bought crude oil had to pay it in US dollars. And because there was the dogma, the ideology, that crude oil was a fossil fuel, and meaning a scarce resource that needs millions and millions of years of dead dinosaurs and plankton and biological substances, the ideology said in some years there won't be any crude oil on this planet anymore. I remember in the 70s, we learned in school that around the year 2000, there won't be any oil on our planet anymore. All oil fields would be empty. Now there is a very, very interesting book from Thomas Gold with the title, The Biosphere of the Hot Deep. And he proves that oil and even gas is always reproduced again and again and again, just from stone. In German language, we called it Mineralöl, mineral oil, and it is always recreated by the very high temperatures and pressure in about 100 kilometers deep down under the surface. And in the Soviet Union and in the Eastern countries, it was the official teaching at universities. And even in laboratories, we know that it was the abiotic, the theory of the abiotic source of crude oil. And in the laboratory, we could already create artificially crude oil from abiotic substances, but never from biological substances. Yeah, so it is proven.
But biology was doing that, right? The chemical process.
Fact, but if we now go back to the theory, the basic theory of economics, where we say that goods and services that are in abundance available never have a price and are never scarce, we know the volume of crude oil on our planet increases from year to year.
Right.
So the reserves of oil on our planet have never been as large as this year. And in the next years, it will again increase and decrease. Yeah? So there is no reason that we must sell it for a price on a market. It is a free good like the air that we breathe. Yeah, and this is a problem for the dollar, because then if we link the dollar to the price of oil and it is a free good, it has no price, then the dollar has no value.
Is there a concern that we're using, more than is being produced naturally or anything like that?
This is not a real problem, because we can synthesize methanol from CO2 and water. And methanol is the second most dealt liquid on our planet after crude oil. And the mechanism how to create methanol from CO2 and water is well understood and is every day in use in the industry worldwide. And I'm really very surprised that when in our mainstream media, everyone says, oh, we have scarcity of oil and of gas, etc. No one picks up this theme, how to create methanol. It is a great sprit for cars, for example. It is far way better than hydrogen, because we can nearly use the same infrastructure without expensive adaptation as it would be necessary for hydrogen. But in fact, this expensive adaptation for gas stations, for example, is an argument for hydrogen, because some industries can again earn money from the taxpayers. Okay.
It would be cool to make money off hydrogen. It's literally the most abundant thing out there. If you could make money selling hydrogen, it's better than selling snow to Eskimos. Sticky Mark said, and the word economy means control, which I think is actually, the word economy means running of the house. So it's like,
yeah, this is one interpretation from Aristotle. Aristotle said we have two meanings. The one is kremistika, this is speculation, and the one is eudaimonics, and this has to do with how do I earn my own living for my family and myself. These are completely different things, in fact.
Right.
This is something that we have forgotten in the last few hundred years.
Right. So, I mean, but in terms of running your own house, running your own life, as you put it, it seems like the idea of scarcity and of zero-sum game. I don't know if in Germany and Austria, do you have musical chairs? Do you have a game like musical chairs where they play music and there's one less?
Jerusalem, the travel to Jerusalem, we call it. Yeah.
So even though it's a zero-sum game, it feels like it's a negative reciprocity, because something is lost
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
for swing
I
purposes,
understand
Franz,
that,
or
yeah.
maybe Martin, do you actually know why it is called Reise nach Jerusalem? Because it's interesting. I mean, it's called Journey to Jerusalem in Germany and Austria.
That's the
And
name of
it's
the.
about it's about one guy always losing out. I mean, what is this, you know?
What the heck? Journey to Jerusalem is the name of musical chairs. Journey to Jerusalem. That's a bit Masonic. Okay, well that's interesting. Okay. I mean, I'll have to do a whole I'll have to study that. I have no idea. I mean, because it probably has to do with the Knights Templar, and they're like, okay, mein Kindergarteners, Louis Gates, that's pretty good. That's adorable. Well, I mean, so if all of this zero sum game is actually negative reciprocity, so people are losing money, losing resources, and someone's snatching it up, and as every time they play, one person snatching up all the chairs that they can, so they. Just stacking all the chairs.
We have different problems today in economics. One is we need scarcity to come to a price and a value on the market. And on the market, we only measure the value of exchange. So if the deal is done and I'm the owner of whatever, the measurement is gone. What we never are measuring is the value in use of goods and services. The value in use is subjective and not objective, but it is more important. Now, today we have the possibility for crypto coins, cryptocurrencies, and we can link them to smart contracts in a different way. So I think a better way for a sustainable financial system would integrate the producer and the consumer. We also have even the word for prosumer, prosument. Someone who he can produce the things that he's using also. So he's really autark. And autark communities, I think, are the future of mankind. We know the fabricators, the 3D printers, for example, and we know vertical gardening, where we can, in a sustainable way, plant our own vegetable and fruit, even in a small apartment. It is possible today. So an argument for a real economy was we need the logistics, because we have raw materials, and then we have some products, and we store them, and then they go into the discounter. And if the customer pays for that, you have also a logistics process with the money floating back. But if it is possible to bring the location of consume and of production at the same point of time and space, I would never need again any logistics process, and this would bring economics to disappear. We wouldn't need it anymore. And I think...
But we still do, because we're moving things around, basically.
Exactly. But if I can produce it exactly and in this time and in this space where I need it, perhaps the replicator from Star Trek series. And it might...
Or at very least, if you grow a bunch of plastic using 3D printers, you have a bunch of plastic reels, and you print a chair there.
Today, even we can produce plastics from hemp in 3D printers. So they are ecological. So they
renewable
are
resources,
cradle technology. So it is really great. And the next thing, already 15 years or so ago, I found in a sub-page of the website of the United Nations, a very, very futuristic technology. They called it manageable matter. Manageable matter was proclaimed with a timestamp of the year 2045. It would be the technology where we can create matter out of light beams. We use light and create matter. We beam it, the thing that we want, on our table. And the timestamp at this time, about 15 years ago, was 2045. And where
do I find this? I can't even see this.
I always tell this my students in my lectures, and then I go and search for that in the internet. And now I found on YouTube. You can go to YouTube and search in some channels of popular science, creating matter from light.
I
And
think
you
they
will
actually,
find plenty of technologies where they say, now we know how we do it. We can create matter directly from light.
I think they actually have something like this in Star Trek Discovery. They call it programmable matter, and there they show some things along those
Exactly.
lines.
And this is the next step forward. So here you have it. This is one example for that. Exactly.
Femto technology is the idea of printing below nano. So you've heard of nanotechnology. Femto is where we're printing entire new day.
Exactly.
Just everything happening in it.
Directly from light.
Okay. So with 2045, that makes sense. No, I mean, this is all very reasonable, to be honest. Talk about space or technology and the idea of exciting matter using light. But of course, making matter from light, 2 gold ions move in opposite direction at 99.995% of the speed of light and velocity. So do we have to use gold to make matter? Is that part of the, the cost of this?
Yeah, but it might be that gold is one of the most often found material in the crust of the earth. The scarcity of gold has always been also a historical artifact. They had to make it scarce because it was always used as a coin. This was the dogma of scarcity. Yeah,
that's interesting because there's a big point in the Middle Ages. Spain finds a bunch of gold.
Yeah,
gold becomes worth less than
copper.
copper.
The Silk Road in the Middle Ages was the key for wealth and richness. Why? Because the Knights Templar, they observed the Silk Road.
And their musical chairs.
Because in the far east, China and India, silver was always more precious than gold.
Right,
in Europe, it was the other way around. So they did what we today call an arbitrage.
You guys have this, we have that. So there was a breakup.
Exactly.
Bring it back together.
So maybe just to bring it to the point, this means, Franz, if we were to be very honest in our assessment of resources, I always think about the Technical Alliance and the technocrats in the 1930s, whatever happened to them, but they made such an energy survey. If we would do this honestly and not deceive anybody, then basically it would even be hard to find the proper unit to base any scarcity on, right?
Yeah, it can be done if we align the interests of the partners in a deal. So just to give you an example, Jeremy Rifkin was an advisor of the European Economic Union in the 80s of the last century. And the last book that I read from him was called Excess. And in this book, he wrote that in our current economic system, the producers generate revenues if they sell their products to the consumer. And therefore, they have an incentive for planned obsolescence to make the lifespan of the products ever shorter. So then they could sell more. And in fact, this decreased our resources and increased our waste. It was terrible. And therefore, he had a suggestion. He said, why not buy the products, but rent them?
Right.
And the producer stays the legal owner, and he has to pay for repair. So it is naturally, there is an interest for the producer to increase the lifespan and to improve the quality, because then he decreases his own costs. And then this would be a new calculation scheme for the value in use, and not the value of exchange. And using coins now, digital coins, we can implement such smart contracts. All we have to do is to make the interests of the different parties in our economy parallel, so that they can cooperate and not work against each other.
So just to make it clear, this would be the same principle like with the Chinese doctor. What they say is that the doctor
What they
gets
say,
paid
I know, yeah.
what they say,
They
at
are
least.
paid as long as the patient stays healthy, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I understand that, yeah, and I would really appreciate this kind of change. But on the other side, I think we could even give free income for people, but not really for free, if they do something valuable for the community or themselves. An example, if I would improve my personal health, we know we have goods and we have services. And in the business world, if we sell a service, the customer must cooperate, otherwise it won't succeed. So if a patient doesn't follow the therapy of the doctor, he won't become healthy. And if the students don't learn what the teacher says, they won't increase the knowledge. But if they cooperate to increase the value, a healthy human being is of greater value than a sick one. And a well-educated one has a greater value as a dumb person.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So the more powerful your slaves are, the more powerful your king is.
If we cooperate, we can pay them together. Yeah, because we create the coins for each one of them. And we don't need to take them away from anywhere, because they are bits and bytes. We just write them onto the accounts, you know?
So here's the thing. So, you know, and this sounds better than communism, because you just cut out the middlemen and riffraff. I hear all that. It's
exactly.
It's just German managerial theory. It's a lack of entropy. I hear you, or Austrian economic theory. But here's the problem: when you're doing these exchanges, and back to this idea of reciprocity, negative reciprocity, positive reciprocity, neutral reciprocity. Either negative, somebody's getting screwed in the deal as usual. Positive, everybody wins. Neutral, it's not that big of a deal. It didn't destroy anyone's day, but you didn't really lose anything. So, I mean, I feel like there's not enough incentive in neutral reciprocity to do anything, because if you could go on without it, it's not that big of a deal. So everything needs to be positive reciprocity. I wouldn't have sugar without your coffee. We wouldn't have our cappuccino economy without each other. So how do we maintain positive reciprocity in in the future? I'm scared to even ask what kind of system this is, if this is zero growth or if this is growth based. But
I think if we put each partner in a deal in the same boat, and then we measure the value in use, and the coins are only generated if there is a positive effect for all partners in the deal. Only then they can become wealthy, but all of them together. So either they win together or they lose together. But it is not possible that one partner wins at the cost of all the other partners. We can exclude this in smart contracts. In fact, we can do that today. It's not even hard to do.
And this might only be...
If you know that this creates a plus-sum game, and the plus-sum game is the premise for honest information and communication. So you lose all intent to defraud your business partners. Yeah. Just imagine a bank that doesn't give out a loan anymore. It just creates money on a blockchain for its customers, but only if the business partners agree to cooperate with all other businesses in the whole business branch that up to date used to be competitors. They cooperate, they pool all their knowledge, all their workers, all their capacities. You see, many resources could be saved because we have double, triple, quadruple capacities only because of competition. And that's not necessary if we cooperate on a national or international level in each different business branches.
So in a scarcity-based zero-sum game, there's one piece of bacon. Everyone's running for the single piece of bacon. How's it work in your scheme?
In my scheme, we give orders how much bacon we really need, and then we cooperate to produce it. Exactly. And if we succeed in cooperation to fulfill the demand, then we all win and we get wealthier. Yeah, because the ultimate measurement, value in use, is how well the bacon tastes. And it is healthy, okay?
And all the work that goes into making the bacon, because that's the
exactly.
trade.
So it is not necessary to pay for work anymore. Because if the customer says the quality of your product is fine, the customer creates your tokens, your money. Because it just writes down the value that your achievement means for him as your customer.
Okay,
you
what about
you are creating your own money, for example, by improving your health or improving your education.
So what about increased value? For instance, let's say that some town says, well, we need some cheese. And then someone says, oh, well, it's good enough if we just make some buttermilk or something like that. And then other towns like, no, not good enough. It has to be brie. We're going to do brie here. So what's the difference in value? Because they have to put so much more work into making a better quality. I mean, how does that translate?
At the beginning of the system, as long as we have scarcity in cheese or whatever,
could be German cars, right?
We can measure this value like today, but we don't have to pay for it. We have to create it. And then when it is ready and can be used, consumed, the value is just written down because it is created. So this kind of currency would be backed by goods and services. The goods and services and the know-how and the cooperation power of the population is then backing the currency of this region and of this country. And if you implement it in the right IT infrastructure today, you can even prove that this is the case. This is something that you never can do with paper money. With paper money, you can't prove the value.
Or with designer quality goods. This way there's a value based on resources and time. It's
and then if the population in this region or nation is very ambitious, they could say, we want a better cheese, more healthy, using less resources, better for the environment, for the well-being of the cows, whatever.
Right.
Step by step, they can improve the production methods. And if the production methods improve, this is also a higher value. And the producer that now is a scientist and a researcher also, by improving his own methods, can earn more of this kind of money.
Do you have any thoughts why this didn't function yet in Cuba or in, Yugoslavia or,
They didn't have the IT infrastructure. It is a similar problem like in the times of Jesus, when Jesus said, I'm the light of the world. Today we understand that the smallest building block of matter is the photon. Okay. So he was a scientist. And he told us that we can now find out in quantum physics. He already knew that from wherever. We can only speculate. Older civilizations, whatever. But it is quite similar today with information infrastructure as the backbone for cooperation. If you don't have a platform to cooperate, to put the whole supply chain on a platform, for instant real-time information exchange, then you cannot use cooperation, because then you stick to paper and to coins, and this is the natural incentive for defrauding each other.
Do you think in China, are they trying to do anything like this? Sometimes people say that China is using unfair business practices.
Our old economical system, and the Chinese are great in copying certain methods and then step by step improving them. We have seen this on the website for my students. I have the link to a, I think, 17-minute YouTube video from 2011. A British expert for real estate valuation is in China and walks around the ghost towns in the Chinese desert. Where about 80% of the apartments stay empty, but they are luxury apartments. And they just put them quite into the desert to create the numbers in the reporting for the BIP.
For growth,
the central government told them you have to grow in economy. Those are your numbers. And they said, okay, let's build whatever. And then they built cities for millions of people who are stayed empty up to now. So that the real estate companies in China are now breaking down. This is really, we knew it that this will be. And so it's so ridiculous that our politicians said in China, the economy is so much better. They are much better in creating bubbles, and then bursting them. That they have improved our capitalistic system even in this way.
Do you think that maybe this is part of the plan? Like, this is the way we get to the better system, is that we exhaust ourselves so much with this that we
have to run against the wall with high speed.
I mean, I hope that's what's going on, because otherwise,
escalate this to another level. Franz, I'm sure you've heard about the officially first they said 21 missing trillion with Catherine Austin Fitts. I'm not sure if you heard about this. Catherine Austin Fitts, who was Secretary for Housing and Development. And there's and probably now it's 42 trillion. So there's a lot of accounting fraud going on everywhere.
Forget it. Those are really, really arbitrary numbers. It's, because you know, if you're the owner of a bank, like William K. Black has told us, you can create new money out of thin air as long as you would like. And in fact, there are black projects, and hidden technologies for many decades. We know that even in the Second World War in Germany, there were very interesting projects. They had
funded by American Wall Street.
At the beginning, but then the Germans, the literature says, some part of the literature found out a method to create gold, artificially create gold. And there was, the legend says, that they created about 80,000 tons of artificial gold.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And this was hidden in the deep Alpine seas in Austria, Toplitzsee, and other places. And this, in fact, is a problem. Because if you can create gold out of other substances, transforming the material without the use of radioactivity, transmutation of elements, then you can come around each form of scarcity, and this is the first step to destroying the paradigm of our scarcity economics, And the Americans found some of these gold bars, and they had a sign of the German Reichseagle. They were branded with the eagle, each gold bar. And the form of the eagle had a dark color, similar to black on the golden background, and therefore they put all this gold into the so-called Black Eagle Fund in the United States. And this was one of the first cornerstones of their Black Project financing.
Wow.
So they not only took the brains in the Operation Paperclip from Germany, but even the first startup financing.
The spoils, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's really ridiculous. Yeah. Just to play on the scarcity game. Yeah.
That's interesting because as a kid, so my grandfather worked for Lockheed, and
Oh, really?
they tell you things, but they make it seem like it's true, like limited. Like, yeah. Well, I mean, we can make gold. Yeah, we're America. We can do anything. We can make gold. If we make gold, it's going to be a little tiny bit at a time, and it takes a lot of energy, and so we don't do it all the day long, But we can do it. But so then, to me, even still, I'm like, yeah, we can make gold. That's amazing. But to make 80 tons or 80,000 tons or 80 million tons of gold, it's much more significant. They can make lots and lots of gold, which also kind of tells me we could make lots of gold, but we're kind of limited right now. I mean, what do you think about that?
Ben Rich from
Ben Rich
from Lockheed Martin.
Ben Rich, Skunk Works.
Ben
Let me
Rich.
see if it. Oh yeah, I've seen him. I don't know him personally, but I do know.
He's famous for a quote. He gave it at an alumni meeting on the 23rd of March of, I think it was 1993. And he is quoted to have said, "We have the technology to bring ET home."
Right.
And I don't mean interstellar space travel. I mean intergalactic. 1993.
Right. My grandfather used to say things like, where does like a 4-ton gorilla sit? Anywhere he wants to, How heavy do you make a turkey? As heavy as you can. Like these little things that don't really make sense. And then you think, oh, he's talking about levitation crafts, or like U.S. military gets to sit where it wants. So, I mean, yeah, they had a lot of these metaphors that they seem to use. The ET one's interesting too, because they talk about, the connection between ET and light beings and light energy mass and Pleiades. It's always associated with Maria Orsich and the Vril, and the idea of, okay, well, the first mediums of the Pleiades, what do they bring you? What are the first things they tell? Well, free energy, vacuums, things that just replace work, so you have more time to do what you want to do.
Exactly.
And maybe, Andreas, just to do a slight bit of cross promotion, I'm sure Franz would also like just to know that it exists. Maybe you want to show your Xirtus McMoon tape video, just skip through it or just tell the story briefly. It's insane. You wouldn't believe it. And this is what,
How hard is it to find the tape if I just type McMoon tapes on YouTube? Does it come up? Is it like hard to do?
I think.
This is how you know. This is how you know something's good. Even when they hide me, they still hide the
You're shadow banned.
I'm not anymore, but my good videos can still be shadow banned. So if you go to my videos and you just type in search McMoon tapes, should probably come up, right? Oop, give her the X. There it is. The NASA McMoon tapes tape. I don't know if the audio plays through here, but it was just a conversation I was having. But what we did was we just essentially were pointing out what it was like when I was growing up in California, and at California's Moffett Field at NASA, they do have this McDonald's building, and the McDonald's building will have, well, I'll just tell the story more clearly. Basically, I used to work at NASA. I used to do video projection when I was younger, and then got into stoichiometric indexing of different materials. And I found a McDonald's in the military base that is Moffett Field. It's like, okay, I'll go check out the McDonald's. But there's no food in the McDonald's. There's just a guy wearing a sarong, like an Indonesian style kind of skirt, at NASA. That seemed kind of interesting and weird to me. And then bunches of yellow tape boxes everywhere. I'm like, what is this place? I thought this was McDonald's. He's like, no, this is where they keep all of the moon tapes. Surprise. I'm like, that's crazy. Can we watch them? He's like, no, because there's no machines that can even watch these kinds of tapes anymore that work. I mean, we're looking into it and things like that. Like, well, I'm a hoarder. My dad and I go to the flea market. We've bought old tape machines from the 70s and 80s. Like I have tape
Great.
machines like that. We could get started on that. And so the group got bigger and bigger and bigger. And as we were digitizing data and there's girls there that were doing indexing of tape, because there's probably about 1,000 or 2,000 boxes at least, probably more. And then all of a sudden, all the data disappears. And then they tell us, don't worry, because we found another storage unit somewhere has all the tapes, another set of tapes of the moon landing. It wasn't that we lost it. It was that a bunch of the tapes had been written over, and so that there was nothing on the tapes that was from the original footage. But that's okay, because someone had just luckily found this other copy of the Book of Mormon. Don't worry about it. And you can believe these tapes. And it was very flawed and suspect in its circumstances. However, it was an amazing experience, and I loved it. I loved the time I spent learning about using digital equipment and everything. But yeah, there's always a little thing. And so I've shown some of the footage that we do have, and you can see there's some weird things about it. But I mean, it was a good time. I have no problem with it. And I just probably should have taken the opportunity to work at Lockheed. It felt like a bad idea because America was deep in a war. I didn't really want to be like building drones, So that's, yeah. But I don't know, Raph, if that was what you're getting at. It was another time. But Ben Rich is a very interesting guy. He worked with my dad, actually, and I remember my grandfather. And so one of the things they were involved with was the Columbia shuttle and putting the ceramics on the shuttle. My grandfather invented the ceramic for the shuttle. But so okay, we were talking about the before we got sidetracked, Raph, with my family. Sorry. Economy, finances, aliens, ET, interdimensional beings. Okay, I can go from there. So the idea of free energy beings. So if we're interacting, like Maria Orsic, real hyperbrewing, it seems like they're talking about this free energy world that is beyond it's not just zero, it's not just more than zero. It's a huge growth or a unlimited resource thing. Is that the case?
Definitely, because it is only a difference in how you make up your physical models. If you think in a closed model, free energy is impossible. But if you make the premise of an open system, there is always free energy. So if you have a stream of water and the water flows along your house, then you can put a wheel into it, and it will keep spinning as long as the water flows. But once you build a wall across the river, it stops flowing. This is the closed system metaphor. Yeah. So the thermodynamic principles and all those things they tell us in school, therefore perpetuum mobile is impossible. Those are wrong premises. We have open systems in nature and in our universe, and not closed one. Closed systems are an artificial construct in our laboratory, and it's not necessary to project them into our galaxies.
It's also interesting how things grow. I mean, we forget, like people always say, "What do you think money grows on trees?" But it's a reference for things that do grow on trees.
If we value the fruits and the leaves on the tree in money in a plus sum games, then even that is true.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Because always a new fruit grows or leaves, I book it into my accounting system. And then it grows on trees. Why not?
It seems complicated because you're replacing things all the time because your body is digesting energy, but that energy is being used and going elsewhere into activity. Yeah. So it seems like it's going to be great, but it's going to require a lot of analytical accounting to measure all of the subtleties.
It requires a perpetual communication flow, but in nature, in biological systems, we already have it because each cell of our body communicates with our organs, with our brain and different other cells. So in nature, this already works. We just have to implement it for our human society, because our society always takes the models from artificial mechanics, from artifacts that we already have built. Remember, a few hundred years ago, we thought our solar system is nothing more than a clock. And God is the all-knowing clockmaker. Why? Because we just invented clocks. And we understood how they work. Next step is we invented the steam engines. Boiling something and creating pressure to do mechanical work. And then we thought, okay, when we eat something, we produce calories, and we have the steam engines here in our belly.
Right.
Later on, we discovered that there are electrical streams in our nervous system. When we worked with electricity and started to build the first calculators and computers. And since those days, our brains are computers. Okay?
Right.
And we think our computers sometimes will wake up and be conscious and intelligent. Yeah, ridiculous.
Maybe you want to expand upon that, Franz, your view on weak and strong artificial intelligence, because I always go on about this, and I'm sure it'd be interesting to see what you have to say about this.
Yeah. I'm not afraid of artificial intelligence. I'm rather afraid of natural stupidity.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
And to believe that
Where's that bumper sticker for my car?
Be something like artificial intelligence, for me personally, already is natural stupidity. Why? As a young student, I wrote a very remarkable book from Marvin Minsky, The Society of Mind. And he proposed the theory that our brain cells are interlinked, and just because they are communicating in a network, something like consciousness can create on an emergent level, can emerge. And then he said, okay, we as living beings, as humans, are brain cells, and we are interconnected via the internet, and then a global mind will emerge via the global web, and this will then take over and will be a kind of our new god.
Well, calm down, Marvin Minsky. No, but okay.
But there was another scientist who tried to disprove it. He wrote a very large volume with the title The Emperor's New Mind. It was a quantum physicist.
I forget the name, but I know that book.
Last year.
Roger Penrose.
Roger Penrose, exactly. Yeah. And his arguments were more convincing for me, because he said, if consciousness can be physically explained, it might have to do with quantum physical effects in the microtubuli of our brain cells. But the thing is, we still do not understand what they are doing. And as long as we do not understand this, we cannot replicate it.
Okay. I don't know about that. That's the thing Penrose is wrong about. So the guy I encourage you to read. Sorry if you're not done. If you wanted to keep going. Do you know who Ben Goertzel is? Benjamin Goertzel? Yeah. Have you heard of Benjamin Goertzel?
No, not yet.
So Ben Goertzel is a shell. He works on open cognition, open cog, and does a number of projects, the Singularity plus humanism, transhumanism groups. Yeah. But he focuses on artificial general intelligence, the idea of a system of intelligences that work together. And what I've noticed is, and what he's talked about a lot, up until now, we're doing basically emulation of what humans have already done before. So you get a bunch of women and you study their secretarial work in the 1950s, and then you build Windows, Microsoft Excel, and all of these tools based on what they actually used to do. But now we're doing this sort of where AI creates a neural net, studies what's going on, and then invents new things on its own. So technology has been going kind of gradually until now, and then in the last 2 years, technologies has started to explode in terms of the kinds of things we haven't even figured out how to use yet because it's been invented by AI. So I think AI is emerging. The main question has to do with emotional intelligence or priority-driven pattern recognition. Because if you...
This is one part of the equation, but I'm very skeptical in general because I think we use the wrong terms. At the end of the 70s and during the 80s of the last century, in the German-speaking countries, we used to call computer systems EDV, elektronische Datenverarbeitung, electronic data processing.
Right.
And now what is data? Data are sequences of syntactically correct characters. All you have is a syntax rule. And you receive characters, a stream of characters, and say, okay, they follow a syntactical rule. And all that is what computers can do. They can only check the syntax. On the semantic level, you can nothing transport. What we call information cannot be transported and cannot be sent and cannot be sold because the information is created in the consciousness of the receiver. Because you need your whole biography and the experience of your lifespan, or may even be of more incarnations before. So to create the information in your own mind. And this is something that an artifact can never do because a robot doesn't know what the meaning of life is. You know?
I don't know. So here's how I feel. Like the thing that's going to bridge the problem here will be solved before we come up with the answer. In the next 3 years, probably. I think it would take us 100 years to answer that question. In 3 years, that won't matter because there's going to be humans and AI that are networked together. There are already in the last 20 years.
Do you really believe that?
Yeah, for sure.
So
I mean, even
a very interesting discussion between AI specialists.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one person who was a consultant for AI applications in the military. And he said that the military around the world, in each and every country, has a golden rule. They don't use neural nets and other AI technologies that humans cannot understand for safety reasons. They stick to rule-based systems where the rules can be read by humans and interpreted and understood. And they say, even though they know that the performance of neural nets as an artificial fighter pilot, are far superior than humans, they don't use them because they don't understand them.
right, humans don't trust them yet. Yeah,
exactly.
That's the irony. So in other words, also tell me if my audio is okay. Someone told me it was bad, so I fixed it. Is this still all right? Okay.
You were a bit loud, but that's all.
Yeah. Next time, let me know. So okay, AI can do better things in the last few years than humans can do, and humans are afraid of that because that means that they can't beat it at any point. Which means that if AI solves all these broken systems that have been humans' manipulative ways of winning the economy, I mean, before humans are ready to deal with that. But okay, maybe that's beyond our scope. But let's think about the idea of the reset.
Let me just ask a simple question, maybe before we go to the reset, also for Franz, in terms of, let's just say, creating pattern recognition system, decision support system that may somehow be subsumed under artificial intelligence. Would it not be reasonable to assume that a system can only be created that is as complex or as advanced as the consciousness of its own creator? So in terms of, wouldn't it be contingent upon the understanding of the scientist or his understanding to actually be able to create a more advanced technology?
I mean, the mathematician and a calculator.
Because here, what they always do is they put this idea that
we have another fundamental problem in this context, and this concerns the goal function. So if I say
Yes,
for an
importantly.
algorithm, he has to optimize something, then I need someone who says, okay, this is the correct goal function. Yeah, and this can only be a human, because only we know how we feel well in our economy and in our society. No robot can do that. The robot can optimize some numbers. He can drive the deficit down and the productivity high, whatever. Yeah, but no one can guarantee that this will be a life-worthy environment for humans.
Right.
That's
I think that this is part, and this does lead into the reset, right? Because then the idea of transhumanism is that
Yeah.
AI already, you have transhumans today, because
Yeah.
children have been raised using computers and have been taught by computers how to think.
Yeah.
It's imprinted in our minds already. So people have already begun the transition. When that happens, it won't be about what's best for traditional humans. It'll be about what humans can adapt to the new system that exists, right? Isn't that the idea? The musical chairs, the journey to
Yeah, but
Jerusalem.
do you think that those
That's a scary name.
humans will be happy?
I
How is
mean,
happiness defined for a transhumanist being?
right. This is a thing. Happiness becomes less important because that's a drug. You can just take happiness, you buy happiness. But maybe there's a more important thing there, which is the satisfaction in your ecclesiastical endeavors, right? You know, if you enjoy the fruits of your labor, what's the most valuable thing that you can actually get out of life?
So
well,
you have to create some hormones to create happiness in your brain.
or just use radio. You just change the radio slightly, probably.
Yeah, okay, I understand. Yeah.
But it does seem like that. They're getting to a point where they're taking away more and more of the chairs, right? And
Yeah.
they're preparing for, we've talked about a debt jubilee, maybe, where everything is so extreme. They say, you know what? Why don't we just do something else? So, I mean, do you think that that's coming?
I would suggest if whoever forces the game of musical chairs, then we have to improve our human possibilities and abilities, and starting with levitation, and we won't need the chairs anymore. I think the human potential is limitless, completely limitless. We've always known this through all generations and through all history, and this is what is perhaps the real danger for some small power groups, hidden power groups, who want to deprogram us using transhumanism.
Do you think that the
introduce
goal?
the limits of human evolution?
Do you think the goal is to, with transhumanism, with the reset, is it to perpetuate this system even more, or is this all to prepare us for whatever new system that's coming? That just own us, and it'll
I
be
think
like
this is the original human goal of limitless evolution. We have this possibility. The human potential is definitely limitless. Perhaps Sai Baba and other gurus who were possible to manifestate things, artifacts, out of nothing, only with their will and their mind power. Yeah. And I think that this is something that each of us can obtain if we practice seriously enough. Therefore, we have limitless powers. And if some small groups demonstrate how easy that is, and how they can improve their lifespan and their health, then there won't be any interest for transhumanism anymore. Because why do I need
change?
to implant something into my body if I can willingly regrow my organs by my own?
And just for a pop culture reference, I'm not sure if Xirtus, you've seen it. Anyone who still needs to wean off of transhumanism it's nicer to watch it on a screen. Cyberpunk Edge Runners is a really great new anime, and so many of those actually in the end point towards, well, it's nice neon lights and flashy music and so on, but do you really want to live in that world? You know, because it's not that you get it rented the way you described, that the guy needs to, you know, take care of it, but you get, how do you call it, the entire economy turns into a rent-only economy, but you have to rent everything, and you own nothing, and you should be happy with the right drugs, I guess.
It will be a ransomware economy.
Right. That's kind of what I expect. I imagine walking around and all of a sudden it's like your screen, you're in the middle of the road and it's like all of a sudden your vision turns off and then you have all these pop-ups you have to click and you get hit by a bus. Yeah, that's coming.
Just as we're getting into the last half hour, thank you, Franz, for your time so far. Martin, do you have any more questions or anything that came up for you that you'd like to ask or comment? You have to unmute yourself, Martin, if you wish to speak.
No, I'm just amazed of this discussion. I was just in awe listening to it. Couldn't think of a question right now, to be honest.
So what, of course, Andreas's topic is, and also Martin's topic, Franz, is always the idea of, you know, historical resets as well. So we are right now in front of a announced reset or planned reset. We'll see how it goes for everyone, and how we can evolve through it, just as you mentioned. And then there's the idea, of course, of past resets, and also the question, could it be that maybe only a few hundred years ago, we still had a lot more access to atmospheric electricity and free energy that we maybe didn't even need an accounting system? Because some people say this Babylonian system is thousands and thousands of years old. We find some coins, we find some crayon stuff, you know, in die Kreide gehen in German, you know, as some accounting. But how old is it really? How important was it really? Or is this strange scarcity accounting maybe just a quite recent phenomena? What is your overall view? We're not expecting a definite answer, but this is always the big question. Or maybe, Andreas, you want to just briefly, 1 minute, give a rundown of Tartaria in terms of trade federation.
Let him go first, though. I think he's got that.
No, I've already seen some videos from the mud flood. And those theories. So,
wunderbar.
Yeah. I'm very aware of this possibility, so to speak, a theory. And I've only seen some very strange coins with the face of an alien creature on it. So, from wherever the idea of limited resources and scarcity may have come, I think there is a plan behind that. They use it as a tool for manipulating humanity, definitely, because I would say even our brain structure and our behavior is heavily influenced by this idea of scarcity and the value of scarcity, the market value.
That is actually, you know, so beyond all of the, you know, dramatic and exciting ideas of Tartaria and the mud flood, the most centric and pervasive point is the idea that there was a non-scarcity based economy that existed, that was based on trade, not war. And this is at odds with anthropology and archaeology somehow. They say the world started with war in scarcity, and then Dad tied up his belt, and then we've come from there. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, though. We always look at examples of after an environmental shift, after a war, scarcity introduces itself. So there's a pressing idea that there was a non-scarce economy. I agree with you. But what I wonder is, are they preparing us for this reset because they want to go back to a more efficient economy, just owning everything? Or are they going to just stop the inevitable perfect economy by perpetuating this economy again, a scarcity-based economy again?
Now, whoever is in the driver's seat at this point, I think if they understand the consequences of a cooperative society, they will aim for that goal, I think, because it is more pleasant for everyone. The so-called elite and the population also, because it is not necessary to take away the wealth from anyone to give it the other side. We can together in a plus sum space, we can increase our wealth together, and no one loses. Not even the environment, the plants and the animals. They can also thrive together with us.
And so, what are some of the differences between this system, this emerging system being run by the NWO versus the Soviet Union, right? So the Soviet Union kind of said, "We're going to try this." How was that different? Why did that not work?
I think in communism also you had a power structure, a hierarchical power structure, and as long as you believe in the scarcity of money. And you esteem this scarcity as necessary, like a law of nature. This was the goal of economics. The goal of economics was to make the rules of society as simply manageable like the rules of mechanics and optics, after we found out the mathematical laws, how to manipulate and how to control that. When we found out how mechanics and optics work, the first economists tried to use mathematical equations also for the management of human societies. But in fact, those laws of nature in mechanics and optics only work as long as no conscious being is involved, because the problem always is our free will. I explain it to my students in some lectures when I say, put together a row of domino pieces in a row and tip the first one. And then we know the law of causality says after some time, the last one will fall down also. But now if the pieces of domino would be living conscious beings, perhaps 3 in the middle of the row have decided we won't keep going on this game, will step out of the row, and then causality doesn't work anymore. So causal rules only work in dead artifacts, in machines that we have programmed, like the clockwork for our solar system, as the metaphor. If we would be convinced that our sun and the planets are conscious beings, perhaps, we would have a completely different understanding of stars and galaxies, because we would understand that there is some kind of communication between those beings also. So communication replaces the exchange rule of the dead matter.
Right.
And
Currency.
communication always needs empathy. Empathy.
People mix up. So we talked recently, John Hutchinson and his wife Nancy, about this idea of currency being current flow, and so everything has to do with flow, and so scarcity has to do with disruption of flow. Exactly. Disruption of currency, right?
You need to disrupt something, for example, supply chains, to create scarcity.
Right. It's just kinking a hose. Okay.
Yeah, we learn it just now. In those days, we can learn those lessons firsthand.
This might be interesting to you, actually. If you've seen Tartaria at all, one of the things is the idea that one of the oldest coins, and we've got Sanskrit, we have the Sumerian tablets, we have the tablets of Groznytsa in Bulgaria. Turns out, fun fact, oldest thing we can find so far, supposedly, is the Tartaria tablets. And what they look like, let me see if I can find the, this is kind of what the picture looks like. Mm-hmm. You got a double-sided square coin versus the circular coin. Mm-hmm. And it's divided in 4 corners. One seems to represent, what we think this means is one is for agriculture and the other is for, taking care of animals. Mm-hmm. What do you call it? So you've got a butcher or something, somebody who's a sheep herder, a goat herder, and he's saying, I'm going to trade you the futures suspected amount of a sheep and goat I have, for the future's prospective amount of agriculture of fruit you're likely to have.
Exactly.
And so
it's a kind of basic information infrastructure without IT platforms.
and on top of that, they're using this idea that I've looked at one of the trees, one of the fruits in your field. From that, I'm going to project the value of this many fruits from this many trees in this big of a field. And I've looked at one of your goats of a certain number, the certain last born or firstborn of it, whatever. From there, I can tell how many goats you're going to have, and they're able pretty accurately to decide a season early how much goat for how much corn or grass or maize or whatever. And so that's supposedly the oldest idea that we have for this trade contract, is about futures trading, able to project how much value they'll be able to make.
This is one interpretation, but it might also be that it has only to do with stock keeping.
Mm-hmm.
How many goats do we need to feed our population? You know?
Mm-hmm. The consensus
so
is.
It's not necessary that they have tried to find out a singular value or a price for one goat. Perhaps they just counted the pieces to have the right number to feed the whole tribe, the whole community.
Yeah, there was a reason I forget the exact. They from one town or from one state to another state, they found the exchange coin.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that something came from one place to another place. But I think that's the idea, is that the trade was already a benefit because both of them needed the trade, or else if you didn't bring your sheep to this area, then they couldn't eat. If you didn't have sheep, then no one could eat.
Trade is a benefit as long as you don't introduce money and a market price. Because once you introduce money and the price mechanism of a market, only the money creator profits and all others lose.
Interesting. So how would you recommend it, let's say, in a circumstance like that where someone wants to, trade or exchange, some resource they don't have with someone else who has, and you have an abundance of one resource and a scarcity of another, and they have the opposite problem?
Now, as long as you can produce something in abundance, you don't need a price and you don't need money. It would be enough to use tickets or vouchers. Because in an honest, fair ticket system, you have a one-on-one relation between one goat, for example, and its ticket. The goat has a serial number, a stamp, and the ticket also.
But how much is that ticket worth?
Nothing, because we need one goat for each member in our village.
But I mean,
it possible because we make the relation between each member of our town and one goat. And when he brings in the ticket, we give him the goat, and then we can destroy the ticket.
But then the person who made all the goats, like, who's making the goats? See, it does feel
themselves. If the goats are happy and well fed, they will reproduce by themselves.
Well, dang, that's
like
fair.
Everything in nature, if the environment, the milieu, is in a good condition, they reproduce by themselves. This is the miracle of life in reality. Only when humans started to produce something against nature, this was perhaps one interpretation of the original sin in the Bible. Because there are some theologians who say the original sin has nothing to do with sexuality, but it was when humans started to settle. As long as they went around and hunted and gathered something, they took the fruits of the nature as a present. It was a gift. a gift for them, gift economy. But then they said, no, on this field, I want to grow my potatoes. And then they heard Mother Earth. Okay. And because so much human work was put into the fruit of this ground, they had to fight for that and to defend it against others who wanted to steal the fruits of their labor. This was the start of the conflicts in our society. If we just go around, put up what falls from the trees as a gift from Mother Nature, then we will find that there are some archaeologists who found out that in the woods of the Amazonas, the Aztecs, for example, and the Mayas, they planted the Amazonas woods as their garden. Yeah, and it was to nourish them. Yeah. And it was in such an abundance, and they didn't need to work for that as gardeners, for example. Yeah? It grew out from itself. They just took their own waste. It was biological waste, of course, brought it into the wood, and out of that grew new plants for fruits and vegetables. So the nature reproduces itself if we provide the right environment.
Wow.
Just as with the scarcity with gold, or not scarcity with gold and oil, isn't it also the issue I always see also now, of course, with a small part of it with the legalization of marijuana in some states or some countries, but also agriculture in general. It seems if we take out all the petrochemical agriculture, Malthusian theory stuff, nature itself actually is too efficient that a scarcity-based economy could even be working with it. So they always need to compartmentalize it, forbid certain elements, certain things, certain plants, heavy taxes everywhere, all of that. So
particularly hemp. Hemp as a plant is very useful in many different forms. Perhaps Henry Ford produced parts of his cars out of hemp.
Right.
So everything that we take now, produce it from crude oil, plastics we can create out of hemp. And also medicine and clothing. It's very useful, and it was very near linked to human evolution, at least for the last 30,000 years.
And it was actually taken out by the DuPont family, right?
Yeah.
So they criminalized hemp
and the Mellon brothers
and prevented it from being used for all the good use. Yeah.
And in Germany, Adolf Hitler forbid the use of the Lakowski tool. Lakowski, that was an electric apparatus who used electrical streams into the body, into the human body for therapeutical uses.
One term is Tesla-Lakowski multi-wave oscillator. We actually have one of those in Vienna, and in some places there is some new productions. One is by Arthur Trankler.
Yeah,
there's different ones, and definitely worth to understand it and try it out.
Why do you ban this?
This was awesome. Forbidden by Adolf Hitler because of the German chemistry industry. Yeah,
what did this thing do?
And other companies. They also, like DuPont, wanted to sell their chemical substances. But today now we know the term electroculture for the use of electromagnetic fields on plants, for example. We know this is much more efficient and useful than what the chemical industry produces.
Magnetic field affecting biology.
Yeah,
why would
exactly. This is what I'm talking about just now. Yeah, exactly.
So the chemical companies were going to make a bunch of money without this here, so he had to stop them.
Yeah, because imagine you have almost free or practically free energy. You just need some coils. There is no substances to sell. There's nothing, not even
Wouldn't
supplements.
Germany want that? I mean, they were dealing with its war debts and everything. Wouldn't they want free energy? That's wow. This is interesting. I'll have to look into Lukowski resonator a lot more. Interesting. Well, you know, this is a big connection to this idea of like the churches, like the cathedrals that use these organs for sound healing and everything else like that. So we're living in an idea where everything has to cost money. They can't give you the cure for free and keeping you sick. That kind of ruins my next question, though, which was going to be, is there anything you would miss when everything was fixed? You know, I mean, when the world's all better, there's going to be no incentive for people to make bad movies. There's going to be no incentive for arcade machines necessarily. It'd have to be like a religious goal of yours to get anything done, right? Why would you create anything anymore?
Yeah, that would be the end of human evolution.
You
No
think so?
incentive for inventing anything new.
I mean, was that true?
But even implementing your ideal version of a system of exchange that you would imagine, for example, as a transition.
It would not be a system of exchange. It would be a system of cooperation.
Right, but within that system, you would not be afraid that people would have no incentive, right? Just to be clear.
Definitely not, because I can always learn something new, to play an instrument, for example, or a foreign language. Yeah? There is no limit for my creative potential as a human being. And this is something that you have to live in your own biography to understand that. There is always a goal of personal evolution. And to set people and humans free to evolve and to unfold their potential, to set it free, this is a goal for new societies, for now, new social structures, I would think.
I mean, yeah, I guess we're kind of running out of new things that can be done by humans without repetition anyway. I mean, at a certain point, it has to be about guaranteeing humans the or the earth a sustainable quality. So, yeah, maybe we got to that point. Maybe that's what incentive was for. Try everything out really quickly, and then we can...
Yeah.
I do worry about it, though, because it seems like this is the thing. So as an American, or just growing up in California in the 90s, you know, the collapse of the Soviet Union, terrible for a lot of people, pretty amazing for California. We had access to Chinese wealth. Soviet citizens of science came to work in California. I mean, this influx of value, a very small part of the population getting so many resources. It's the Roman Empire spoils, you know, this feeling of saturation of value that is gone now. It's gone in every part of the world. People have lost huge amounts of wealth. I mean, I feel like that's the trade-off, though. We could either have a sustainable system where everything works out, but it's pretty calm, or we have these awesome rises, but they come with crashes.
I would say what we have lost was the polarity. We had two different political systems. They were all hierarchies, and steered by small elites in the background. But the one side was communism and the other side was capitalism with different dogmas. And each one played against the other, so they had an incentive to be better than the enemy. But once they accepted one single rule set around the world, this incentive to be better than the competitor has been lost. And therefore now everything goes down and collapses. It's very logical for me. This is a kind of natural law of societies, I think. If you don't have any competitor against whom you can measure your own power, then you degrade.
So then what do we do now? What's like the next step that humanity can take, or even individuals, whichever direction you want to take that?
Perhaps we have to learn that we don't need to compete against each other, but only against our best result.
Right.
I always compete against myself, my laziness, my imperfection. And then I can always win because I can always become a little bit better than yesterday. And this should be my personal incentive. And this can be the incentive of a village, of a town, not being better than a competitor out there, being better than my last best result.
Not bad. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because so much of our life is spent worried about what other people think of us, what
Yep.
other people are doing. How can we also incorporate a value of other people while still focusing on our own self-value?
Now, I made the suggestion of this virtual money, where the money is created via personal achievement, and they called it information money. And then I thought a little about the political structure that would evolve out of this monetary system. And they had the idea of cooperative individualism, because we are very, very different. We are individualists. And this is good because we need different skills and different knowledge. But then, if we are different individuals, we must learn how to communicate and cooperate with each other. And therefore, I called it cooperative individualism. And it because there has always to be some term with ism at the end, as we know, communism, capitalism.
Usually.
And I called it cooperative individualism. And then I made an internet research. And I found, very interesting, that this term, cooperative individualism, is a very, very old political idea from the founding fathers of the United States, of the Constitution.
They came up with cooperative, eh?
And there is also a website, cooperativeindividualism.org today. It's a virtual museum of all the authors and the philosophers and the politicians that represented this idea.
Cooperative, what was it?
Cooperativeindividualism.org. It's great. I really recommend that. It gave me goosebumps on my back when I read that. Because I said this now, I think there is a dash in between cooperative and individualism. Cooperative-individualism.org. This may be the correct spell. Yeah.
I got 2 L. Yep. The double L accent.
Yeah, now you found it.
I thought I did.
Just use the link because the search is throwing you off again.
I'll just go DuckDuckGo. I just need a new computer. My keyboard's freaking me out. Cooperative individualism. There you go.
I sent it in chat. I think it's the correct link.
School of Cooperative Individualism. Yeah, this is the website. Exactly. Now you have it.
There you go. Gosh. And then there you are too. All right. We'll go back to that.
Yeah.
So, well,
not yet formally linked to them, but it would be very interesting, in fact. Yeah.
All right. Not bad. Welcome to the School of Cooperative Individualism. This is interesting. So this is the philosophers of the Just Society. So Saint-Just and the French Revolution as well. Interesting. Yeah. So what is their main goal is been around since the 17th century, since the French and the American Revolution would look like with the Just Society.
Yeah, this was one of the goals. In fact, today we know they missed this goal.
Right. Well, so you've heard about the debt jubilee also, right? I don't know how many more pages back I have to go. But so this is the idea that we're headed towards this debt jubilee and this complete erasure. So I wondered, do you think it's because they have wanted this goal for so long and they felt like they had to take everything from everyone else before they could accomplish their goal? Maybe this was the quickest way they could get to the goal you have, you know?
No, I'm not so certain, because I think
the road to Jerusalem.
Right from the start, they knew that the debt-based money system is only of a short time.
It's
And
temporary.
if you allow me
Yeah,
just
it's
very briefly,
temporary.
Franz,
It's not for a long time. It has an end date.
I'm just asking if you're aware of the road to router, or even maybe Andreas, you want to put it in road to route A, but in one word, router. And there is this comic from the 1970s by the Federal Reserve, which is called, what's it called again? Router and the road to route. It's called the road to router. This is
right.
This is the guy's website who talks about it. But if you just enter federal, yeah, there's the comic on the first video.
Okay.
There it's all explained, and it's basically the idea that even back then, when they started with the IT systems, they already knew that this was a completely system based on nothing, and that's why it's called road to route A, as in a programming term, that you have to go back to source, you have to restart the system eventually. They knew from the start that it wouldn't last from at least 1970 in this case. Yeah.
Probably since 1770. It's kind of
Of
like,
course. No, that's just the recent version.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so I mean, it seems like they're working on a system that will collapse. It's been inevitable that it will collapse, maybe since the very beginning. And this was just to take everybody's wealth in the world, so that one hegemony could control all the wealth and guarantee this perfect system. Maybe they're just really trying to do us all a favor. What do you think?
It may be because there was also the myth of the philosophers, emperors. They thought that would be a very just society,
right?
If the emperor was a real philanthrope, not only by name, and the philosopher. So someone who is not very egoistic, who has an altruistic character, and I think this it is possible to implement a new society led by really wise philosophers and scientists, of course, who break away from the old dogmas that have encrusted our society and stopped our evolution. If we can break free from these old dogmas, then we have a chance to start now, and this would be the right term for a reset.
But how do we get rid of those people that are keeping up the system?
Evelyn Rothschild died yesterday. We just got to move on.
People, I would prefer getting rid of their mindsets.
I agree. I think that's exactly
I can guarantee they themselves feel much, much better if they can break free from those limited mindsets.
Yeah. If we keep waiting for people to die, there'll be new people to replace them. It's true. We have to continually introduce way better music. Just get people dancing to a different beat. That's all we can do.
Yeah.
Franz, I really love you. You're great. I'm just excited that you came to tell us all these things. Let me click on this button here. America. Boom. Translated. If you guys go to franzhormann.com, you can actually get the entire website in English with this little translation English button right here. Isn't that amazing? And so
don't forget the website for my students. Go to the menu button on the left upper corner.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. And here now to courses. The link for courses.
Oh, there we go. Epic.
And here you have all the resources. The YouTube videos, my scriptures, the books I recommend. Very, very important download material from the Bank of England, from Standard & Poor's, from the German Bundesbank.
Very cool.
Yeah. This is something I would recommend each and every politician or CEO or university teacher.
Right.
Or student.
Especially students, guys. These are the videos that you need to see. I'm pretty jealous. As only having one very, very good German video myself. I just wanted to say thank you again, Raf and Martin, for making that possible.
Yeah,
but here's a slew of
we got to do the shameless cross promotion for the sake of all of us and those who want to know more about Tartaria. Just pull up the link.
I shall act like you know 26, guys. If you haven't already taken the time and listened to the entire thing through, here is the entire conversation between Martin and Raphael as
great.
monologued
Yeah.
as myself, which is pretty weird, if you think about it.
Yeah, so this is Xirtus' main presentation in German for everyone in German who wants to learn more about history and Tartaria and ideas. Martin and I translated.
They did an amazing job. It's a wonderful translation. So far, I've heard really good things from German speakers so far, saying that they just love the way it sounds. So thank you guys for doing such a good job. And you can get it at Act Like You Know 26 on YouTube, which I hope you guys have subscribed to. But if you're not, do it. Click that button. Okay. And then, so Franz Hörmann's also got a wiki page here. So if you want, you can actually get a little deeper understanding. And there's some links here as well on the Austria wiki page. So you can get all of his work, not all of his work, but a lot of his work right on his website. Get to his courses, click on his newsletter, check out his blog, and read the definitions of money. And you know what? I have a last quick question. Any crypto coins that you'd recommend people investing in? Just really off the top of your head, if you got that feeling.
Yeah, those crypto coins where you can formulate the smart contracts by yourself in your own community. Those are that I would recommend, because then you really understand how the system works and you can influence it and change it. Look at what happened in the DAO attack 2016 with the Ether blockchain. Okay, someone hacked the smart contracts, but not by manipulating the deeper hardware or software. He used the official interface and took out, I think, about $40 million as coins in his own account. And the whole community was buffered. And then they tried a soft fork, and after that, a hard fork. They couldn't help. And the manipulator argumented, yeah, but you created your own rules and it didn't break the rules. Right. I used the official tools to do that. And if I achieve this kind of thievery, perhaps, but using your official rules, I will even go to court to claim the money that I've put out of your blockchain.
Absolutely. Yeah, you should. But yeah, that's true. So yeah, create your own coins, create your own values, create your own
and your own rules for creating and exchanging those coins.
Yeah. Epic. Martin, also, thank you for sending me the links. I was like, where's my Martin link? So here's the Telegram Tartaria 777 Tartaria, by the way. There's no first star. Tartaria. And if you open the Telegram app, it'll get you into the group. There's a good amount of members right there. You can imagine. So it's the group you want to be in especially if you speak German, but you don't have to. You can speak English. I'm pretty sure they'll deal with you. Yeah. So click on the Tartaria 777 group, which I'll put the link in the description. Raf, remind me right as soon as this intro is done, and I'll make sure I get that done.
And actually, just today, I posted why the first R is missing. I posted an excerpt of a German dictionary of 1908, and you find that in this channel.
There we go. See, guys? So if you're interested in Tartaria, you're interested in world history, you're interested in non-scarcity-based resource economics, then this is the place for you. And yes, again, thank you guys for being here. Franz, thank you so much for taking the time to tell us all these things and to teach us a little bit about the world. I appreciate it. See you next time.
It was great fun. And I would like to seeing forward to meeting you again.
Oh, thank God. We'd love to do it again. It's so hard to do a 101. It's like when you're it reminds me of going into a classroom the first day.
Time travel, perhaps.
Do you ever see the students the first day? And it's just like, well, okay, it's the first day. There's only so much I can tell you. Yeah. So but thank you for the first day. We'll do it again soon.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarian.
Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.